My name is Edward, and I believe that my soul was given a choice to reincarnate as Edward or as Marc Jacobs, fashion designer, and it chose Edward. It's a metaphysical mystery. Do you believe in reincarnation? Do you think you have lived multiple lives on this earth? Do you think, if you have been reincarnated, that you just randomly showed up in this body or that you had a choice? I love metaphysical books. I listen to them on audio all the time. I have listened to multiple books about past life regressions and in between life regressions. And there have been many accounts of people saying that in spirit they met with a council of elder souls who gave them a choice when they came back to be incarnated on this planet. They were shown different scenarios, different lives they could live. You could be this person living in this family in this part of the world, and these would be the circumstances of your life. Or you could be this person, or you could be this person. Well, here's why I think that I might have had the choice to become Marc Jacobs. A very strange thing happened when I was about 12 years old, and I remember it vividly. I remember because it was shameful and embarrassing, and those are the things we remember. They really make an impression on us because they're kind of painful. So I remember being in the sixth grade, about 12 years old. I remember being in school in my classroom. I remember specifically where I was in the classroom. I was on the left side of the classroom, about third row from the front. The door to the classroom is up there to the left. And I was sitting there with my textbook. We had textbooks which were owned by the school. So you were required to cover them with a cover to protect the book a little. We generally used a brown paper shopping bag and just cut it up and covered the book with it. We often would draw or write on those. And I remember sitting in the room and I didn't have any friends. For some reason, I thought it would be cool to have a best friend. And, I would write his name on my book. So I wrote the name Marc Jacobs. I spelled Mark with a C, which I didn't know was a valid spelling of the name Mark. I knew Mark, another Mark, spelled his name with a K, which I thought was the way to spell Mark, but I thought it'd be cool to spell it with a C. And Marc Jacobs, I wrote the name Marc Jacobs on my book. Another student in the class, a boy, saw the name written on my book and he started teasing me and saying, "Oh, you're a girl. You have a boy's name on your book. Oh, is that your boyfriend?" And so humiliated and embarrassed and thinking, why did I do that? That was so dumb. I scribbled it out, but I specifically remember the name. I remember the classroom, and it was just strange, right? Like, where did that name come from? I didn't know anyone named Marc Jacobs. We didn't yet have the internet. This was about 1976. 1976. So Marc Jacobs and I are about the same age. He would have been about 12 at that time as well. So there's no way he was not yet a famous fashion designer at age 12, and there's no way I would have heard of him. And yeah, his name just showed up in my head. I also recall a story when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I told this story in my avoidant personality disorder video of designing clothes when I was a little boy sitting at my mom's desk with a little tiny pad of paper that she used to make the grocery lists on and drawing pictures. And I was drawing a shirt and a skirt and designing outfits. And my dad found out and was very upset because that was a girl thing to do. And he was mortified and I was just shamed and I shut down completely and I stopped doing that. But yeah, so I was very interested in fashion as a child, as I'm assuming Marc Jacobs was as well. I also recall, which doesn't really mean much, but when I was living in New York City, my roommate was obsessed with Marc Jacobs and he met him or saw him at a hotel bar one time, and it was like a big deal to him. Yeah, by that time, Marc Jacobs was a famous fashion designer. This was probably in the 90s. Yeah, the 90s. Flash forward to 2021. Marc Jacobs is an established fashion designer. I believe at that point he was already married to his handsome husband. He's wealthy and successful and has a $10 million home by that time. I, in contrast, am living in a rental apartment with a housemate, a small apartment, and no boyfriend. And yeah, by the world's standards, I'm a flop compared to Marc Jacobs, right? So 2021, I'm listening to the audiobook with the past life regression, the life between life session, with the guy being shown several options for his next incarnation. And I've listened to this book many times before, but for some reason this time it kind of struck me. And I suddenly had this vivid memory of my childhood designing clothes and my age 12 situation with Marc Jacobs' name on my book. And it just popped into my head that I was given a choice before I came into this body to be Marc Jacobs or Edward. And I chose Edward. Why would I choose Edward over Marc Jacobs? Well, we all choose what's going to help us grow the most for our specific needs. There may be karma that needs to be paid off, and lessons that we want to learn, and things that we want to deepen our understanding of. So, evidently, my soul thought being born into a family where I'm shamed and not able to speak about my feelings and told that I need to stop crying, and I learned to become very self-sufficient, and I got a big appreciation for self-help and for metaphysical stuff and looking for meaning in life because of this. So maybe that was the right thing for me.
A deeply compassionate soul, who wishes to know herself as compassion, may choose to incarnate into a highly dysfunctional family. As she is treated with a lack of compassion, she comes to appreciate compassion more deeply. It is the absence of something that best teaches its value and meaning. A lack of compassion in the outer world forces her to turn inward, where she remembers her own compassion. The contrast between the lack of compassion in the physical world and her inner compassion provides her with a more profound understanding of compassion and therefore herself.
Now, if my soul did choose to be Marc Jacobs, who knows? Would he have become a successful designer? Potentially not. The soul that did inhabit Marc Jacobs' body worked for it and became successful. And I'm not saying that because he's wealthy and successful by the world's standards that he doesn't have challenges as well. I do understand that when he was a child, his father died, and then his mother remarried several times, and every time his mother remarried, he'd have to move house, and those are challenges too. So I choose to believe that his soul chose that life because those challenges were appropriate for what he wanted to accomplish here, and my soul chose my life. So here we are. Here we are. A lot of people, I'm sure, think that this is absolutely insanity, wacky weirdo that I am. But I love this stuff, and I don't care if people think I'm strange. I love it. It's so interesting. It's so much more fascinating than just watching the Kardashians. This is deep level stuff. Fascinating. There's also a twist with my sister Mary, who was born before I was born and died before I was born. And there's another metaphysical mystery there involving the souls, Mary, Edward, Marc Jacobs. But I will speak about that next time. And Yeah, what do you think? Were you reincarnated? Do you think you had a choice? Are you happy with your choice? Do you kind of wish you had chose a different life? I think we all choose what's best for us, and I think the body we're in, the life we're in, there's so much opportunity for you, and you need to embrace it and learn. And you can always grow and change your life, change your circumstances. That's what it's all about. Anyway, see you next time for that part two, metaphysical mystery.